Hey guys, JT Tran here, and today I'm bringing back Arden Leigh because you guys loved her so much, and so did I. Thank you so much for coming back.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
So today we want to address something that we all go through at some point in our life, and that is dealing with a breakup. Now, you've been dumped, right? Or are you mostly like the dumper?
It's been about 50-50.
50-50?
Yeah.
Now, I got dumped, especially when I was younger. But maybe it's something about what I'm doing now that I've been able to be the one that dumps people. Not all the time, obviously. But how would somebody get over a breakup? Especially if you've been together for like at least a year.
Yeah, I think the first thing that you have to realize is that the things that happen to you after a breakup are chemical. Because, research in the field by Dr. Helen Fisher, for example, that talks about the chemicals that get released in our brains when we're in love with someone. There's a lot of dopamine, there's a lot of oxytocin, and we come to rely on our partner to get our fix of that. It's literally an addictive chemical, even though it's released naturally in your own brain. So when someone cuts it off very suddenly, you're basically going through the same things that someone coming off of heroin and cocaine is at the same time. So if you need to stay in bed for a couple weeks and let that course through, don't feel ashamed of that, because your body is literally processing a withdrawal. It's like you're going through a detox. So be kind to yourself for a while. Your friends are all going to say hey, come out and party and get over it and whatever. And that's fine when you feel up to that, but don't feel like you need to do that right away, because you do need to be kind to yourself on a very physical level, on a very this is happening to your body, take care of your body, and make sure that it gets better.
That's very interesting, because I didn't actually know that. I have read that when you're together for a very long time, that your identity becomes very enmeshed with one another. That you have memories that even if she wasn't there, you sort of associate the two of you. And so you have these sort of everyday activities, and then you just start thinking of her. Because even if she wasn't there, your identity is part of that, of the two of you. So one of my recommendations, or you recommended that, rest for a while, right? Go through this withdrawal period. And I think another recommendation is, I remember when the first time I ever got dumped, I had this sort of anger. I was this sort of, undirected anger at myself, what was wrong with me. I was angry at her. But one thing that really helped was trying to put that in a constructive pursuit. In this case, this was back in the day when I was living on the beach and doing surfing. So I was I'm going to work out and run and do all that kind of stuff, and at least do something positive instead of simply just directing my anger at people or that memory of her.
Yeah, that's a smart idea too. I've often, after breakups, I had a breakup after which I took up parkour, and then I had a breakup after which I took up Krav Maga. I was
you just got tougher and tougher.
I know, right? It's funny, I noticed that when I'm in a relationship, I get very soft. I started studying Tantra and Reiki and things all these healing arts, and then as soon as I have a breakup, I'm ready to punch things again. But I think anything that you can do that works toward your self-improvement is, obviously you're channeling that in a good way. And I think also you're completely right about having these memories where things pop up in your head. And another thing about breakups is that even if whenever you form a memory, or even if it's something that you're anticipating doing with your significant other in the future, you have a neural pathway that forms in your brain. And so every time you think of that, either that memory or that thing that you thought you were going to do that now you're not going to be able to do, it's literally, there's a neural pathway in your brain that's ripping apart, and it's literally painful. So it's kind of there's, every time you think of something new, it's going to hurt, but luckily, once you kind of deal with that, when you think of that same thing again, it's not going to hurt as much. So you kind of just have a phase where you go through all of these memories that pop up randomly, or all of these things that you thought you were going to do together, and it's going to be painful, and kind of every time one of those comes up, I'm well, I took that one off the list. Okay, I take that one off the list. All right, there's another one. And all that means for me is that I'm getting closer to healing, because those neural pathways are breaking apart, and I'm going to make room for some new ones.
And I think another thing that you can do is not necessarily create new memories, although that's something that you should do, is you list like all the sort of things that perturbed you about your significant other. And this isn't a time to be nice. Even though she might have been wonderful and the relationship just died, you have to list out all the horrible things that she did so that it reminds you, so that you don't always like create this sort of fuzzy feeling of nostalgia for her constantly. So you have to like distance yourself. I definitely recommend not necessarily unfriending them on Facebook, but you can put them on what is it, mute, right? You don't get the notifications because you don't want to see them like going out there having a party, you know, dating other guys. Just put some distance between the two.
Tweeting about how miserable they are.
Yes, and when you're ready, then you can be like, hey, I'm having a good time. Check me out. Be jealous about my lifestyle.
I think you're right about, you know, making that list about the things that weren't working about the relationship. But I think the most important one for me, it's like, you know, it's like I don't care if someone, like I don't look back and be like, oh, well, he snored really loudly or whatever. Like that doesn't really make a big difference to me. But to me, the one thing on that list that's important is that if someone is breaking up with me, if someone knows who I am and knows all the things that I have to offer in a relationship, which like, frankly, are pretty awesome because I've worked on that a lot. I put a lot of effort into that. And if they're saying, I don't want you, then what they're saying is that they're incapable of appreciating me for whatever reason. And that probably has more to do with them than it does with me. And that really is that's a deal breaker. Like that is a high standard I have for someone who's going to be in a relationship with me, is that they're going to allow themselves to appreciate me and to let me treat them well. And certainly, like, if someone has a problem and if it's like, you know, hey, there's something we need to fix, or there's something I wish you could do better, like, yeah, I'll sit down and listen to that, absolutely. But if someone's saying, like, no, I'm breaking up with you, then the big deal breaker there for me is just that they didn't appreciate me. And, like, that's like your number one thing that you need in a relationship, is you need someone who wants to be with you.
You know what, on the reverse side, and this has, you know, this kind of came up with one of my friends, where he got this sort of like conversation with his, you know, now ex-girlfriend. It's like, I'm falling in love, so we have to break up. Or it's like, I might like you too much, so we have to put some distance. Do you think that's true? Because to me, that's code for I don't want anything serious and you do. Or what do you think that's code for?
I think that a lot of people will lie to make someone else feel more comfortable.
Okay.
That's where the whole like, oh, it's not you, it's me thing comes from. But I think there is also something to be said for people who get cold feet, and for people who start to say, oh, this is getting too serious, I'm feeling too much, and I'm not comfortable with that. The thing that I think, though, is that for someone who feels that way, it's very rare for them to be able to articulate that, because I think usually people who get scared like that and who self-sabotage, like no one's going to come to you with a breakup and be like, so I'm self-sabotaging, by the way. Like, no one does that. They always, like, their brains are going to rationalize and say that it was something else. So I don't know. And, you know, in response to your friend, I just say that, like, either A, she's lying, and if she's not comfortable giving you the truth, then screw her, because she should treat you like an adult, and she should behave like an adult herself. Or B, if she's being truthful, then you want someone who wants to fall in love with you. Someone who's like, I'm falling in love with you. Awesome!
That's what I said. That's what I said. You don't break up with someone just because they like you too much, or, you know, they're falling in love with you. I was thinking like someone else was coming into the picture and they wanted room, you know, she wanted room for that other guy, and so he was wanting a bit more or whatever. So I was like, that was a nice way of making you feel good about yourself. Although I don't know if there's any really good way to break up with somebody if one party wants it more than the other.
Sure. Yeah. There's no easy way out.
Are there any ways or interesting ways that you've broken up with someone, or like someone's broken up with you, or anything like that? What's a good classic way to break up with somebody, you think?
I know for me, I always give someone a warning that things aren't working, and you know, there is some debate about this. Some people are like, oh, don't give ultimatums, that's manipulative. And I do think it is manipulative to be like, oh, stop this or I'll leave you. But at the same time, I want to give fair warning that something is not working.
It should come like out of the blue.
Yeah.
Right.
And that way I'm like, hey, XYZ is not working for me. Like, we need to be a little more solution oriented, just so you know. This is a big deal. It's important to me in a relationship. And ultimately, if I don't get this, it's not going to be the right situation for me. And then I'll give someone about 3 chances, and then if they keep doing it, I'm just like, man, I warned you. I'm sorry. Can't do it.
All right. Really great advice about how to deal with a breakup. Again, this is Arden Leigh. How can our audience find more about you?
Well, I blog at Arden Leigh, ARDENLEIGH.typepad.com. And I also am on Twitter and Instagram at Arden Sirens. The name of my coaching company is the Siren Seduction Forum for Women. So,
and you also have a book too.
Oh yeah, and I have a book called The New Rules of Attraction. You can go buy it at Barnes & Noble.
Yeah. And you provide coaching for women as well as men?
I do, yep. Primarily toward women, but there have been men who have reached out to me as well, and the more the merrier. So
just check out the information. It'll be in the box, all the links, everything that you need to know. Thank you again so much, Arden.
Thank you, JT.
We've all had our hearts broken, right? And we've all wondered, like, why did she break up with us? And how do we get our ex-girlfriend back? And that's today's topic. How do we get the ex-girlfriend back? First of all, I like to call this the Kate Middleton method. Now,